Is it weird that I'm going to start this review of the Thieaudio Prestige Ltd by showing you these? This is the Kinera Skuld, and this is my all-time greatest earphone. All-time greatest when I have these $1,000 plus earphones here. I have a set of IER1ZR, I have 64 audios, Noble Audio, etc, etc. You've seen them on the channel, and you also see me talking about the Skuld as my all-time favorite earphones. Well, sometimes something just strikes a chord with you and nothing else can replace it. And that for me is this, the Skuld. Simple 5 balanced armatures, nothing fancy, but just absolutely beautiful tuning, beautiful representation of the music, and obscenely clean and clear, and just a wonderful overall design. Well, I've been talking about these for about 1.5 years on the channel, and everybody's gets curious. People are, get it, and the feedback's been positive. Like, yes, this is actually one of the best. This is a giant killer of an IEM, but today it's been replaced, not in terms of giant killer ability, but in terms of overall listenability for me. And it is this, the Thieaudio Prestige Ltd. This is a reworking of the original Thieaudio Prestige concept, and it's absolutely insane. It sounds so bloody good. It is ridiculous. I cannot stress enough how much I like how these sound. I don't say things like, the generic, one of the best. This to me is now the best earphone. This is the gold standard that others will be measured to. I've been listening to this for 2 weeks and I am just blown away. Before I get into the full review of the sound, the ifs, the whats and the whys and the hows, this is the packaging. The packaging is completely underwhelming. It's standard. You get that on any $500 or less Thieaudio earphone. This is the sleeve. It's unremarkable as you would expect. This is the carry case. It is absolutely pathetic and generic, and you'll see this branded in other companies' names. The ear tips included are decent, but they're nothing to write home about, so they should go ahead and they should include some final E-series tips and maybe a set of ASLA send-a-fit tips, so include a couple of them. I'll leave a link to those in the description below. ASLA, Zendafit, Elastic, I'll leave the exact ones because they've got multiple different ones, but I'll leave the exact ones in the description below so you can go and check them out. They're a little bit more expensive, but my God, they're the best ear tips on the planet. So grab a set of them, use them with these, or use them with any other earphone because you'll get that benefit. The cable is pretty good. Thieaudio do really, really good cables. I like the one in the Monarch Mark II better, the corded one that I advised them to steal from another company. But this one's really good as well. It passes the sit-down test. It doesn't flail everywhere. It's very supple. It's a quad twist. It has the detachable jacking system so that you can plug in different terminations. So for example, I want to go from 3.5mm termination, say my BESaudioreview DX300 or my Hibi R6 Pro 2 has a balanced connector. I want to use that. I just simply line these up, twist it a little bit and pop, and it goes, and then I can use the balanced connector for my DAP. So I really, really like that. The cable works very, very well. It's nice, nice premium feeling cable. Not the greatest, not like on the level of a Duno Hulk or something like that, but really, really nice for an included cable. Now, back to the housing, the earphones themselves. The housing, for those of you that were worried, and maybe the Mark II, the Monarch Mark II, which I have over here, was a little bit on the big side. The Monarch Mark II is one of the best looking headphones I think I've ever seen, with this gorgeous sort of otherworldly, fiery, volcanic faceplate on it. But it was kind of big. It has a wide perimeter here, and I don't know if you can see this or this comes across well on the camera, but it's significantly thinner here, though it is probably just a little bit deeper from point to point. The way that it sits inside here in your tragus and anti-tragus in this place is absolutely fantastic. This is so damn comfortable. So medium ears, even my girlfriend who's like 5'2", she can wear these earphones, and that's something that she definitely couldn't do with the Monarch Mark II. So they're an all-day comfort. They've managed to cram all those drivers in without taking too much extra space, and they've also fitted them with a recessed jack connector, recessed 2-pin connector, which I requested that they do for safety and keeping out water. Apart from that, the body design, this medical grade resin, is nothing new for Thieaudio. You see it on all their earphones, Excalibur, Oracle, Monarch, etc., etc. So there's nothing new there, nothing that strikes you as more premium. But the faceplate design on this is a stunner. Depending on the way the light hits it, you have this sort of event horizon going underneath, whereas, I don't know if you're catching that, so there's a top layer of a sort of glitter effect, a starry effect, and then deep inside, which almost looks like it's like half an inch. Like when you see this in reality, it's sitting at the top just now, just looking at it on camera, but in real life this looks like it's centimeters under the actual housing, but then you look at the side and it's not. It's just a very thin faceplate, so the depth on it is absolutely amazing, and they look great in the ears. But the main thing is, of course, going to be the sound. The sound is why I'm so excited. All of these earphones are exceptional. I'll take these out because I think these are really exceptional. The Dorados, the Kineras, the Monarchs, etc. They all have their own qualities, but this for me is the one that gets the most right. And really, when you get to this sort of high-end endgame type earphones, it's all about where you get the best performance all around, the most versatile, the most usable, and just overall the tuning that hits you just right in your soul and really like takes the music to the next level. Now, pairing this specifically with the Hibi R6 Pro 2, that DAP has an uncanny silence. It is absolutely no, I know they've played around with the jitter clocks and stuff like that, but it's pure blackness. And these earphones display pure blackness as well. There's no hissing, there's no anything in between. That's using it with the AB amplification, not just the Class A. If I go into my notepad, and if I can find the correct page for this, you can see in the listening notes, the first thing I do when I'm listening to a set of earphones is I'll get the earphones, I'll sit down, I'll just start playing about. Before I get into my actual testing playlist, for example, I will just start listening to music randomly to get a feel for how they sound. And the first thing that I wrote down in the book, and I only noticed this when I went back, was just wow, star, underline. It hit me immediately. It wasn't like one of these ones where your brain burns to and you get accustomed to. It was instantaneous. I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely slapping. I'll go through the other notes. Just extremely refined and cohesive. It is a really mature sound. It is really well put together. Everything is perfectly balanced. Everything feels like it's there. Nothing seems like it's jumping out at you and surprising you. Stunning clarity and air to the presentation. Functioning well with the R6 Pro 2 in the AB amp setting, no observed difference from the Class A amplification. So that was another thing. I was playing about with different DAPs, amps and stuff like that, and really it benefits from a good source, it benefits from a good device, but it does not require really excessive amounts of power. So a fairly decent, cheaper amplifier is going to work well with this. It even worked really well with my iFi Go Blue 2, iFi Blue Go 2, the little wireless DAP. Treble is treated exceptionally well, beautiful extension. The 12 kilohertz peak is tamed and no longer an issue. So the 12 kilohertz peak and the 15 kilohertz peak was a bit of a contention among people who some people liked it, but I think for the majority of listeners it was a little bit too hot in those areas, and people were like coming out with all sorts of nonsense that the electrostatic drivers were screwing up the sound, etc. But Thieaudio had a position on this, and they were positioning the Prestige as their flagship. They had remarkable success with the Monarch Mark II, where it got a lot of fanfare, and they thought they were going to bring out the Prestige and everybody would be like, oh my God, even better. And technically it is a better earphone. The original Prestige is technically better, but it does have two little peaks in the treble and a less cohesiveness in the bass. But they've tamed that. That is essentially, they've not changed the drivers on this, but they've gone back and addressed that, and they've reworked just minor little things. And I think it's now like a realization of the vision that they originally had for it, and it now truly is their flagship earphone. This is streaks ahead of the Monarch Mark II, and the Monarch Mark II, as we know, is one of the most phenomenal earphones for its price. It has a speaker-like quality to the spacing and soundstage. Yes, this is something that you observe when you start listening to jazz music, classical, live recordings and stuff like that. You can clearly space everything. There is nothing that overlaps. There is nothing that you cannot separate and isolate in your mind when you're listening to this earphone. Everything has its own distinctive space and clarity and openness. And that's something that a lot of earphones really trip on. And to me, it sounded speaker-like. It sounded like I was sitting in front of a set of speakers and I was getting that up and down, left to right, width, depth, all sorts of stuff was coming in here. And the presentation and the imaging, the separation, absolutely fantastic on it. It really shows how well tuned, and also how the overlap of the different frequencies never seemed to stumble onto each other. There was never a point where you could feel like, oh, that's the bass is kicking in from the dynamic driver and then we're into the balanced armature. There's none of that balanced armature sheen. There's none of the hotness associated that people assume with electrostatics. Testing sub-bass displays restraint, although it hits hard, it's not an ethereal rumble. That is, the low end of the bass is not tuned for bass heads, as you might expect in an earphone that's designed to be a true audiophile earphone working with a whole bunch of stuff. If you want more ethereal rumble, Vega, Polaris, and the Mangrid Zens up are the ones that you go to. But you wouldn't use those earphones for really anything else other than bass heavy music. I have bass earphones for listening to bass specifically, and then I have an all-round earphone that can work with everything, and this fits into the all-rounder category and it fills that up nicely. The bass on this does extend very good, but it's not got that ethereal vroom vroom, like deep rumble, but it has beautiful quality of lower bass. It's very tight, very controlled, very expressive, especially in the mid bass. Mid bass, lovely texture, depth, and detail in it, where you can actually hear the reverberations of like something like a double bass when it's being strummed. Really fantastic. In fact, if I bring in the Hibby R6 Pro 2 and I'll bring out one of my test tracks. This track I want you to go listen to. It's called Black Shoes by Felix Laband, Dark Days at Exit. It's a really weird song, but it displays that sort of openness, the clarity, the bass performance, but it also shows off an absolutely wonderful presentation of what they've done in those hot treble areas. It's got clicking tones in it that could be a little bit harsh on other earphones. In fact, I did test them with other earphones and they did sound a little bit on the harsh side, a little bit on the metallic side. With these, it just sounded like clarity and detail, with a beautiful way of it decaying. The other song that exemplified the treble performance was at the start of Could You Be Loved by Bob Marley, when they have the timbre coming in, they're shaking it. On the original Prestige, I remember that being a little bit on the harsh side. This with the Prestige Limited is now completely smoothed out, where the extension in the treble is absolutely fantastic. It's engaging and opens up the soundstage. It's got an air to it, it's got a presentation. It's just, this earphone is excellent in every area, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm going to stop rambling because otherwise we're going to get a 20-minute video. If you want specific comparisons, let me know in the comments below. Say what you want to see this compared to. I'll do specific comparison videos to stop this one getting too long. But to sum up, the bass is exceptional, the mids is exceptional, the way that it portrays detail in the mid-range is exceptional, the clarity, the spacing, the way that it can add weight to mains voices but then air to female voices, the resonance in the strings in guitars or in the dampening and of strings on the piano, for example, in Roberto Capisliaghi. Jeez, I butchered that. Or a Naudi high heels example is just beautiful. And then you go into the treble and it's one of the best treble. From going from an earphone where it had the contentious point of being a bit of a pain in the ass in the treble, and that was considered its downfall, to now having one of the best trebles that I've heard, just shows that they were right with the technology, going with electrostatic. This is a magnificent earphone. I loved the Skuld. The Skuld are something that got me really back into the hobby after being quite disillusioned with just the churn of earphones that come out again, and feeling like I'm picking like little things. With the Skuld, I sat down and I just listened, and I think that's testament to the Thieaudio Prestige. I just wanted to listen and listen and listen. I have spent more hours in the past 2 weeks just listening to music than I have in the past 2 years. It is that sort of earphone, the sort of earphone where you fall in love with the sound. Is there anything bad I can say about it? No. That's it. We're at this stage. We're at that endgame thing where you're in the IR1ZR territory. You're in Thieaudio Prestige Ltd territory now. You've got a few other earphones up there. I have still to try the new Campfire Audios to see if they fall into that category. But this is it. This is endgame territory stuff now. This for me is going to be the earphone that I use as a reference against other of the highest end earphones going forward, and I don't give a damn if they're cheaper or more expensive. I believe that Thieaudio can deliver these earphones far cheaper than companies like Campfire Audio. So when you see a company, Campfire Audio, with production and staff and other stuff in the United States, they're paying a premium for that. And you're paying a premium for that as a consumer. With Thieaudio, you're getting the hand down because these are coming out of Shenzhen. They're one of the best tuning companies. Thieaudio, I think, are establishing themselves as one of the best in the business for tuning earphones, regardless of price. Get this out your head now that price is important, because what the Chi-Fi companies have done and the positioning of companies like Thieaudio is they are taking on $3,000 headphones, which are, to be honest, frankly, becoming a bit of an absolute nonsense from these more Western brands. You know, $3,000 for an earphone when you're going to be outperformed by something $1,300. People will not believe me. The packaging isn't on that standard. The shiny isn't there, and the name brand, people still don't really recognize that this is absolutely exceptional.